Hello and welcome to another Woodworking Wisdom. So today I'm joined by Richard. He's over from Veritas, which is based in Canada. Now I think, Richard, introduce yourself, explain what you do, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Jason. I'm Richard Wile. I'm from Veritas, Canada. I'm the Director of Brand Management for Veritas Tools. I look after pretty much the rest of the world outside of Canada. So our local vendors in Canada are dealt with by somebody else, but I look after the global market, UK included, and responsible for sales and marketing for Veritas Tools globally.
Okay, so that's quite a role. Okay, so we got Rich over and we kind of had a chat about what can we show you. So he's got a much better knowledge on some of the honing guides and things. He also has a vast knowledge on sharpening. He's even got this thing. Alright, so this book. I'm going to plug this a little bit because I love this book. Alright, got lots of tips, techniques on how you can sharpen pretty much anything woodwork related, as in hand tools. Now that's experience that goes into there, okay? Things like that you can't always pick up. He's going to throw a few of those tips out this afternoon, so we're going to go through some of the honing guides, whys, whats, and whatever else. So we'll have a look as we go on. So we're going to start off with the MK.II honing guide. We'll get it set up and then we'll go over that with you. So you'll see us in a sec.
Okay, so the MK.II honing guide is a product that Veritas has made for many years. It's been our flagship honing guide. It's the honing guide to match all honing guides, where it includes the functionality to sharpen most things, either with its basic setup or with optional accessories that will take other types of tools. So start out by looking at setup for a chisel, basic chisel sharpening, and we'll walk you through sort of the process of getting the chisel ready to go and mount it in the guide. So we'll talk about this 3/4 inch chisel here, which is set at 25 degrees. So what I'm going to do here is use our angle registration jig and slide this guide along here. So I'm going to use the yellow setting, which is the middle, which refers to a standard angle tool. So this tool is 25 degrees, so I'm going to slide this along to 25 degrees, set it on the 25 degree yellow setting, mount it to the guide, and I'm going to use this gauge, this line here, which will tell me the width. So I'm going to set this 3/4 inch for this chisel, so it'll center it on our in the honing guide. Flipping it over, we want to make sure that the guide is already open so that we can see the space here for where the chisel is going to go in. I'll mount the chisel through that, back it off just a bit. And the tip of the edge against the registration here. And what I find is an important tip is when you're tightening the knobs here for the guide, to keep things aligned properly, it helps to tighten these down evenly. So I'm going to sight down the chisel so we can look down here, and it will allow me to see where I see daylight. So I'm looking at along the top of the chisel, making sure that these are tightened evenly. Because what happens is if the jaw is not tightened the same or skewed, the chisel will move around, and this is a particular challenge when it's smaller chisels. Finger tight is plenty, and I've tightened them the same on each side, so the jaw is actually straight across and not skewed, holding evenly on the back of the chisel. So now that I've mounted the chisel in the guide, I can remove the registration jig. Check where I'm at on the side knob here for at the 12 o'clock position, and I'm ready to hone my standard bevel of 25 degrees. So run it along here, and once I've got my primary bevel established, if you choose to do a micro bevel, you can adjust it to the 6 o'clock setting.
So you turn the knob in a clockwise rotation there, so you bring it round to about 3.
Yeah. And you then can hone the micro bevel for that particular edge that you're sharpening. Of course, once you've honed the micro bevel, you're feeling for your burr, you're able to use it to remove the back by lapping the back of the chisel, and you're ready to go to work. So sounds like it takes a while. However, if I were to start this from scratch, you could probably do this and rehone the micro bevel and have the chisel out of the guide in less than a minute, quite easily, unless you've waited far too long for you to refresh your edge. Then it's gonna take much longer. You may even have to go back to a finer grit or to a coarser grit to sort of regrind that.
It's actually pretty quick to set up, because obviously you've got your lamp stop, side stop to keep things square,
Yeah.
clamps it in place.
Yeah. And we'll lap the back off, and the chisel's ready to go.
Okay.
So that's for sharpening a chisel using the standard guide and the standard jaws. There is a side clamp or a chisel guide that will allow you to mount a narrower blade in the guide, and we'll talk about that next.
Okay. Right, so Rich, having done obviously a chisel, simple hand plane blade, must be able to do that.
Just as easy. First of all, we just confirm the angle. So in this case, this is a 30-degree blade. So we're going to use the same settings as we did with the chisel. So it's the yellow range, but we're going to set our gauge to the 30 on the yellow setting. So that gives us our protrusion for the back. I've already got it opened up here, so I'm going to slide the blade in. Well, first of all, I want to set the width. So this is a 2 1/4 inch blade, so I'm going to adjust the width here to ensure that the blade is
So you're adjusting the side stop to you've got an indicator mark of measurements.
Right,
okay.
right at 2 1/4 there. So that's going to ensure that the blade is centered in the guide for us. So when I flip it over, we'll slide her in, place the edge next to the stop here, and now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sight down, so this is a little crooked on this side, so I want to tighten it so I see no light down either side, and it's just finger tight first. That's going to hold it in place while I just double check to make sure I don't have any gap here and I'm fully against this stop. So then I'm going to give it an extra sort of finger tightness for each one. Remove the registration jig. Confirm that I'm set on at the 12 o'clock position for your regular bevel, and I'm ready to sharpen. So this will move back and forth, and what I like to do is work it through, flip it around, work it back and forth to make sure that the entire stone gets activity, so it wears evenly across the entire surface. And when it comes time to set the micro bevel, I'm going to turn this around to the 6 o'clock setting, changes the angle slightly, and then I'm focused on just the very tip of the edge for micro bevel setting.
So
and I'm ready
3
to
or 4 swipes up and down there?
Yeah, that's about all. And that's really on your final stone. So whatever the fine stone that you're using, whether it's a 5,000 or an 8,000.
You're really just polishing that little micro bevel right up.
All you're doing is touching that up. Once you've moved it to the point where you can feel the burr across the back, then we're pretty much ready to remove it from the guide. A few passes on the stone to remove the burr on the back, and you're ready to go.
Keep that nice and flat.
Nice and flat. Yeah, the important thing is here, don't change the angle, because as soon as you change the angle on the back of the blade against the stone, you've introduced a back bevel and that back bevel is almost impossible to remove over time. So keep it flat, and just a few passes. At this level, with this fine a burr on a fine stone, it's just going to take 2 or 3 passes like that. That's going to remove it, and it's really, you're paying attention to the last ½ inch of the blade here, which is important, the area that you flattened as part of your blade preparation exercise when you first got the blade. So that's as simple as the Mark II honing guide for chisels, for normal plain blades. Just double check your angle, set it up. Very quick, very easy, and repeatable, which from a sharpening perspective is the most important thing, I think.
So you get that one word I love, make it repeatable.
Yeah.
I learned to freehand sharpen, but I can't go back to it now. My plain blade would be all over the place. So I know with a honing guide, at least I can set it up and make it repeatable. The other major thing, it saves me so much time and frustration of not getting things right. So hand planes, chisels, definitely. Now I know one small aspect where I have problems with smaller chisels. So the honing guide, don't know if we get on with that. We can have a go. We might have issues with this.
Yeah, the wide jaws are great when it comes to providing even pressure on wider chisels and plain blades. But when it comes to something narrow like this, we really need something different. We need pressure from the side.
I know with the side clamp area on here, tends to move a little bit. They're quite wide apart, so it's difficult to grip that small chisel.
Yeah.
So
the narrow blade head, which attaches to this same guide. This is the standard guide. The narrow blade head is available as a separate product that you can adapt here, or they're both available in the DELUXE honing guide kit. So that comes with all of these options. So I'm going to just swap this off. So what it does is we remove this version of the head here.
So that's the standard one for the plane. So you swap the other one over, okay?
Yeah, and I'm going to set it on the yellow setting, the same as before.
So you got the yellow dot in the middle, no red on here, so you got the green on the, okay.
Yeah, so it works with the yellow scale and the back bevel scale if you choose to use it for that purpose. So I'm going to snug that down. This chisel here, it looks like it's about 1/8 of an inch, so I'm going to try to get it close. We'll put the guide on, and we have a much finer breakdown here. So this is a 1/8 inch chisel, so I'm going to go to the 1/8 inch mark before I tighten this down. I think this should be, that's 30 degrees, so we're going to, our current setting for the angle. Make sure we have our setting at the 12 o'clock position. And let me just tighten this down. And I'm going to flip that over. Slide the chisel down. So instead of applying pressure on the top,
so that fits in the same way. You've got your lamp stop, your side stop, which keeps it square.
We've got
then, two little jaws. Almost you're clamping on the side of this, not top and bottom.
Yeah, at the sides, and it makes sure that your blade is entirely straight, though the sides are parallel, and you avoid skew. So I'm just going to, that's just finger tight, fine. I remove the registration jig, and I'm ready to sharpen this narrow chisel. So I typically would do that with one finger. And one thing I haven't talked about is, how hard do you press? So this is a common question that I get. If you press too hard, you're going to potentially damage the stone, damage the blade, get inconsistency.
So I can think back to my freehand sharpener. I regularly used to cut into a water stone with a chisel because, especially on a narrow chisel, you just push that little bit, catch the corner, and make a dent in it. Yeah. So obviously a honing guide, I know from your experience, that takes that guesswork out, so you're not having that issue.
Yeah, although pressure is important, the amount of pressure that you bear down on the chisel. So I like to describe it as the weight of your arms. So I'm not pushing here, I'm just feeling my relaxing my shoulders, and the weight of my arm is sufficient to work the chisel on the stone. So this, and with one finger on the blade and the other finger steering, I can work my way around the surface of the stone. Because this is a narrow blade, wear is a particular concern. So you want to make the extra effort. And with the nice wide wheel on the Mark II, I can come right out here to the side, and I still have more than half of the blade, more than half of the roller registering on the stone, so I can keep things nice and flat, work my way across. Once I've got the primary bevel where I want, or if I was just using a micro bevel setting or just tuning up the micro bevel, I would have left it on the 6 o'clock setting. A few passes here, and I just, for these, when I'm on a fine stone, I like to just, for the last couple of passes, pull it towards me, because what that does is ensures that if I'm creating a burr, it's creating it in this direction over the end, because if I go forward again, I can erase that burr from the back, and I want to be able to feel that.
So you're actually keeping your pressure there as you pull back towards you?
Yeah, I'm just putting finger pressure here, and this will allow me to control evenly, so I'm not going to get a crooked.
The other thing that I'm interested on there, it's as much as this is quite a small chisel, you probably manage this one-handed. You're using both hands, that trying to keep it more stable, more balanced.
Yeah, because one thing the wide wheel wants to do is it'll track. So if I try to do this one-handed, you can see it's pulling, because my hand, unless I'm very, very specific on my technique, and
that causes discrepancy on the actual angle of the chisel as well.
Yeah,
possibly.
and it's just going to wear unevenly because it's traveling a different distance. I'm exaggerating here, but it travels a different distance. So you're trying to get consistency across the bevel in the sharpening process. Once I feel my burr coming up on this micro bevel that I'm on, it's ready to come out of the guide. So loosen it off, drop her down. I'm going to lap the back here, again being sure to keep this perfectly flat on the stone. A couple of passes, and this chisel's ready to go back to work.
So one of the other things I know that I love using this for, something like a shoulder plane. I used to hate trying to sharpen shoulder plane blades, so narrow and small. I mean, we can just drop that into there. It's quite a small object, so this will grip this exactly the same way as we've just done. Those two teeth, grip on either side, so it should make it easy. Again, there's nothing else I can think of on the market where I could sharpen something like a shoulder plane easily and quickly and repeatable. So I know it's one of those sort of wonderful little things that you can set it up, it's done.
Yeah, I've got to mount this the opposite direction here to try to keep things even, and I'd like to try to keep this a little loose because it's going to want to move. I can't estimate the how wide it is in the jig, but the jaws, once I tighten the jaws, it'll make sure it's parallel, and I'm making sure that the point registers against the jig. So there's a little bit of room here, but what's important is the jaws will center the blade on the guide, as well as making sure that my bevel is registered against the stop on the registration jig. And I can take that off.
Obviously, with this being nice and central of how that closes down, that means obviously it's central in the jig, so it's more balanced to hold as well.
Yeah, so that, and it's held evenly within the jig so that it's consistent. This is wide enough I can use 2 fingers, get them on right on the point so I can feel. I like to, especially when I'm doing the final few passes, I like to have my fingers past the point so that I'm feeling how the stone is contacting the blade. So I can feel that the blade is rubbing here, so that will give me just confidence that I've got even pressure here. The wide roller will take care of that for the most part, but as we know, we can, in a plain blade, we can use this to camber slightly the blade's profile by altering the pressure from one side to the other. On a narrow blade, it's very easy to do that because the blade doesn't provide a very wide registration surface. So while the roller will keep us flat, it's important to have good technique to make sure that you've got the sensation of feeling good contact between your edge and the stone that you're working on.
So the support roller on the back of this bronze bearing type roller, quite a large, quite wide, so obviously that had a lot more support.
Yeah, so this is part of the engineering and the expertise that's engineered into this particular honing guide. So, other honing guides that we sell also have a smaller wheel on the back,
Which means
And
you got
they're
that
much
problem
more
of
technique
almost rocking a
sensitive.
little bit.
Yeah, for the smaller ones, for the side clamping honing guide, for example, that we sell, it's much more susceptible to technique. In this case, the expertise is here. The wider roller ensures that, it's going to keep the guide reasonably stable. You can still alter it a bit with pressure, so it is not entirely immune to that, but the blade will make sure that the guide stays properly oriented.
One of the nice
to
things
the
with it,
stone.
and I was just watching we've got a screen in front of us so we can kind of see what's going on. And it's amazing when I watch the students when we've done stuff and how if you push your hands down, how the colour of your fingertips changes, goes red.
Yeah.
Your fingers, very light pressure involved with this. People get too involved in pushing down too much, maybe want it cut quicker, whereas actually, as we've just said with that roller and the setup, this is a die-cast metal thing, something that's not plastic. It's got a certain weight to it. So actually, that must all benefit. Just the weight of it will help sharpen your tool for you. You don't need to go forcing this. So it's quite amazing to think of how easy that is to do.
Yeah, and again, the weight of your arms is sufficient. This has some mass to it. It's really minimal pressure required to get really good results. And in fact, too much pressure is going to impact the quality of the end result that you get.
Okay.
So the Mark II honing guide system has a number of other optional pieces that allow you to mount mortise chisels. The skew registration jig allows you to sharpen a skewed chisel. So really it's a complete sharpening system that should do most of everything that you want to do all in one complete package with the side clamping, with the side clamping narrow head guide, which is here, and the regular head. This will provide a complete sharpening solution in the DELUXE sharpening
So quick
system.
to swap over from the what I would class as the plain blade head to the chisel head. Makes it interchangeable. It's got really good location, how everything seats, so there's no misalignment, keeps it square. All those little things add up. To me, it's quite foolproof.
And that's the idea. And we've been selling this chisel for this guide for a long time, and we've made a few refinements over the years, but generally speaking, the design has remained unchanged. It just works, and it does the job.
I mean, you kind of said, we've got simple things like skew jig, camber roller if you want to do something where you've got curved blade. So I have a scrap plate blade in here, I set it up on there, and I still use that camber roller. Mortise chisel head, so if you're doing a hand mortise chisel, you will need something. Let's get this out of the box so we can see it a bit better. Hand mortise chisel head is basically a razor block to go underneath the chisel head that we've got, and brings it up.
Yeah, it handles a much thicker body of the mortise chisel.
We'll really,
As
you
compared to a
hit the
regular.
one thing, it depends on the size of the mortise chisel. And the other thing I want to make apparent, this is hand mortise chisel, not machine one. Okay, very different type of thing. A square machine one, no, we're not going to be able to sharpen with this. I'm sorry. We've had that dilemma, but so normal hand mortise chisel, that sort of whip, give us the aspect of, got to fit in there. Now, I know with the one I'm holding, it's too wide here to clear the roller, so I've had to use the razor in the past. So it's very adaptable. To me, there's nothing else I've seen on the market that catches so well.
Yeah.
One thing.
Yeah, it's a complete sharpening system.
Yep. Okay, so we've done that. Now, I know from last year you've had a couple of new things come out, so I think what we do, we'll have a look at those and see what they do.
Sure.
All right?
Yep.
So, Rich, we've got a couple of new products we've had. We had a side clamping honing guide. I haven't played with this very much, so it's going to be interesting to see what it does. I'm even going to open the box for you. We've got paper. It could be important, I suppose. Now, you must be familiar with this.
Yeah, I think most woodworkers are probably familiar with this design. Many of us probably started out with this design, which is sort of what we often call the Eclipse style side clamping honing guide. It was a product. This is what I learned to sharpen. First guide I had 30 years ago on my oil stones. So this is familiar for most people and is an effective tool. However, it's got some issues in terms of its strength holding ability, its consistency, and lots of times the wheels rust up quite easily, especially if you're working with water as a media and that kind of thing. So what Veritas has done is taken this sort of tried and true design and updated it to today's standards using more contemporary materials. The cast top, brass moving bits, and the threaded screw here. Basically, it's side clamping honing guide like other side clamping honing guides, but it's for the modern day. I love this guide. It's been a long time. There's a few things about this that when you look at it, the jaws have a tendency to appear that they don't line up. Well, they don't until you tighten the blade up. So these jaws are actually engineered so they're have a slight camber to them, and when you tighten the blade.
So you're on about where the jaw mounts are? Okay,
Yeah,
so almost.
this jaw relative to this jaw. So you see, this jaw looks a little downhill.
So they angle down a little bit.
Yeah. So what happens is when you tighten the chisel up, it counts for the flex within the jaw, the movable jaws here. They will tighten up and become parallel and lock the blade into a parallel position, so parallel to the stone.
And I love the dovetail shape almost inside on the jaws as well, which
so
obviously that's pulling everything upwards towards, that's
Yeah.
creating that pressure point, which bringing it back up to the surface, if you like, giving you that location point of reference.
Yeah. So in the Mark II, where we had a protrusion jig to set the protrusion of the stone, or of the chisel, the side clamping guide, we need to use some sort of an aid to set the protrusion for the edge that we're sharpening. So the instructions come with a list of measurements here for the two locations. And what to mean by the locations is you can mount a tool in two different places on this particular guide. There's effectively two sets of jaws, the upper and the lower. I have a tendency to use them interchangeably, and for the most part, I stick with the upper location because it's easier to get a quality registration for the jaws. But either will work. Build your protrusion jig for whatever setup you want. So you got one that you made here from wood using these.
So you've got lower and upper location, you've got angles of 15 to 40, 15 to 40 on the other side. So this will obviously depend on chisel length. Blade length might play a part in this.
Yep. So
I've got your chart, which we did at the hard thing. You said to me, can we make up something that you've got as a reference off the front?
So this chart takes the chart and you can hold that there, and allows you to. So I'm going to use the upper location here, and this chisel.
Just go. I'm going to hold it for you.
Better there. Yeah. Is 25 degrees. So that's the 25 degree setting for the upper location. So what I'm going to do is mount the chisels and get it close to the right size.
So this just literally screws together.
Yeah, so I'm tightening.
You must have a right and left hand thread on the
and it pulls the jaws together and maintain in parallel. So I just got it tight enough so it'll slide without sliding out of my hand. So what we do here is this 25 degrees works this way or this way. Now the issue with this direction is the weight of the guide wants to press downward, and we want the chisel to be mounted against the jaws this way. So
you're actually pushing the guide upwards slightly.
So you're going to kind of hold it that way, hold the guide up, tighten it up, and then you want to double check to make sure you've got complete registration. So the issue with doing it this way is you've got this parallax problem where you try to align it.
In fact, looking at it from the other side, how you set it up, that's actually probably, from my point of view, more accurate as well. It's pulling it against that dovetail, and you're getting a more definitive line off that knife edge.
Yeah. So what I've done is, to avoid some of the fiddliness, is I've made this handheld protrusion jig. So this is 25 degrees for the upper, and with a slightly shorter length, and I've taken the measurements off of the chart here, set up for a micro bevel setting. So what I can do here is, because I've got this lip, I can hold my chisel this way in this position. The guide's own weight takes it.
The weight of the jig is actually pulling it down
pulling it down to the top. That makes registration that much more predictable. So to me, this is a a smoother way and a better way to get more consistency. So
you've almost taken the measurement we've got off the chair, made your own little small custom jig that you can hold easier in your hand, set up the chisel.
Yeah.
Well, that's about a way of working.
And this is the the micro bevel is offset. In this case, it's about 5/32 of an inch, or just a few millimeters. That gives me a couple of degrees of variation for the micro bevel. So I can. It's very easy.
5/32. Sorry, it's a millimeter thing. I'm sorry. All right, okay, just.
So very easy to set it up, register it against the stop. The weight of the honing guide will pull it against the fence and pull it down so that we've got registration against the upper jaws. And I'm ready to sharpen this edge very easily. Again, same as before. Downward pressure is the weight of my arms. Not too much pressure.
Again, you get your fingertips either side. You're trying to keep your fingers nice and equal. You're not pushing down too hard.
So the difference with the side clamping guide and the MK.II guide is the wider roller does help compensate for technique. In the case of the narrow roller that we have here, it provides some registration. However,
so the roller's on. Let's just have probably about half the width, yeah. So there's a little bit. So this has got a much wider roller, so it's much more support. Narrow one, so you've got to get that fingertip pressure right, or yes, you can drag off a little bit right or left.
Yeah, and this is somewhat we've seen.
That goes back to what we said earlier, though. Nice light pressure is going to make it. You don't need to be pushing down.
And sometimes it's helpful when you're working the tool on the stone. It's just to have a look, turn it over, and have a look to make sure you're straight. And what that means is if you have a little bit of pressure on one side or the other, I'm exaggerating, but have pressure on one side or the other, you're going to develop a bevel.
Obviously, if you've got something like a scrub plane blade, you can actually use that a little bit, though.
And the nice part here is because of this narrow wheel, when it's a plain blade, it's very easy to do a camber, and you can actually do an aggressive camber if you want, quite easily with the same tool. But here I tend to, again, to try to wear evenly on the stone. I will switch it around, and this also makes sure to balance the pressure. So I'm using my thumbs here, but again, not much pressure at all. And that's going to continue to work across the stone. Once I've got my primary bevel, then I can change the setting. And if I'm using a chisel that already has an edge, then all I want to do is fine tune that micro bevel. And it's literally a very quick exercise to do that. So if I'm using the chisel and I want to fine tune the micro bevel that I have, pop it in the guide, use the micro bevel setting, snug it up. Few passes, again pulling it towards me so that any burr that I'm creating on this fine stone, which is going to be really tiny, I can feel it here. So I can pull
this would only be on the fine grade.
This is only on your polishing stone, whatever the finest stone you're going to use in your process, which I tend to sharpen sooner. If you wait too long, then the finest stone isn't going to be enough to redo your micro bevel because you've let it go too far. You might have to go down to the next stone. So if this were an 8,000, you might have to get down to a 4,000 or 5,000, do a couple of passes, then come back up and finish it up here. Ideally, when you're working, you start to feel it sharpen, or the sharp edge go. It doesn't quite dig into the material the way you're used to. That's the time to sharpen. Not wait till it's unusable, which is often the case. Is that we put it off too long, and then less than 10 passes, sometimes 3 or 4 passes, is enough to feel the burr. And again, on a fine stone, the finer the stone, the finer the burr. So on a really fine stone in the 10,000, 12,000 range, the burr is almost imaginary. It's that fine, but you'll feel it. It's very, very subtle. Once you've got the burr across the entire edge on your micro bevel, you're taking it out of the plane or to the guide.
Have a nice thing that's just done me about this. It's ambidextrous. You can be right or left-handed. You can set this up from either side. Which that's quite nice. You can swing it round. We'll get into this world if you're naturally right-handed. Just thinking about a few things we've looked at lately where can it be done left-handed. So that's quite a nice feature that if you're left-handed you can tighten that up. Never thought about that before.
in addition to chisels, plane blades up to just over 2 inches, this can also be used for the shoulder plane blade, for any other narrow blade. Plow plane blades will fit.
So we'll do things
here.
like the shoulder blades we've looked at, the smaller chisels, you can obviously clamp all the way down almost.
Yeah. The nice part is you know, it'll take from the very narrowest right up to the full width plane blades in the same tool. And this is at a very user-friendly price. This is something that every woodworker should have as part of their tool arsenal.
I mean, you've already kind of hit on the fact that, you know, we've all for years had, I was classing it as a clip style honing guide. That's where I started.
Yep.
This is almost next generation of it. It's been redesigned, and I know Veritas are great at that aspect of taking something, looking at it, how can we improve it? So those sort of features have been done. The aspect is wider. I like the different dual options. I know with the standard Eclipse ones, you get the kind of problems of it won't grip certain chisels. The dovetail shape on there are going to pull things towards the chop plate. So your pressure's all being transferred up, which is helping it grip in that location. So that's very clever.
Yeah. So to me, it's a fairly universal tool. It is a bit more technique sensitive, so you have to pay attention. It's not going to, unlike the Mark II, which will, all you got to do is move the guide and it'll sharpen. This takes some technique in terms of making sure you have
the width on the roller
even
you've
pressure.
got there is double the width of that.
Yeah.
What we've all managed with possibly for years.
Yeah. So it's certainly the side clamping honing guide, 21st century version of it, much finer materials. You may want to, if you're using a lot of water stones and a lot of water material, you may just want to make sure you leave it so that things will dry out in a light oil here on the roller. Every once in a while, we'll keep things spinning freely.
To really give it a bit of a clean when you're done. Okay. It's a nice new accessory. Something for Christmas.
Yeah, I think it's the ideal addition for just about anybody. It's very portable, very quick to use, and you know it will, for the bulk of chisel and plane blade sharpening, it will do the job. And it'll take a 1/8 inch.
I have a pet hate of sharpening narrow chisels. So something that makes it easier. Wow. I mean,
Yeah, and a plow plane blade is more or less, some of them are that thin, they're quite easily sharpened in that.
so we're holding, this is a 1/8 chisel. We can go top or bottom level. Sets it up nice and square, clamps it together beautifully.
Yeah, so this is where there is some difference between the upper and the lower location. You can see here that the protrusion is shorter in the lower location. So for some of the shorter blades, it might provide enough extension. So on a smaller chisel or a plow plane blade, you'll have a tendency to want to use these because they're only this long.
So I've got a shorter blade, obviously I can go in the lower setting as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's look at that one. We know how to do a plane blade. We can do a chisel really easy. We know we've got the scope of how wide this will go. Let's just have a quick look. Can I bring this right out? Wow. That's wider than the planes I've got in the rack, which means the blade's going to fit. That's really easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plenty of width for the standard.
So lots of room for
blade.
this to do a blade.
Yeah, up to about 2.5.
Okay.
Yep.
I think you'd even actually manage on here. So a big scraper plane blade. They're quite wide. Bigger than most plane blades. That'll just about fit in there. Going to be tight, that one. All right, maybe
I don't think
not.
so.
All right, so that's just pushing it up just that little bit.
Yep.
But okay. Right then. So we've looked at that. I think we do the short tool one now and see what that will do for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cool one.
So Rich, we've got simple spoke shape. Now I know from experience one of the worst things to try and sharpen. I've always had problems of either trying to make something to hold it or how, what? Okay, so it's one of those come-to sort of things of how do you sharpen, because the blades on these tend to be smaller. short length, won't hold in, definitely the side mount sort of holding guides we've looked at. I know with the Mark II it's a struggle to get the length, so quite a short thing.
Yeah, and the blade this is a 30-degree bevel, which requires quite an extension. So this is one of the most challenging blades we have to sharpen in the shop, and it's fairly common. As well, we've got other types of blades that don't fit so well in some of the side clamping guides, or they're too short to fit in the normal Mark II or the side clamping guide. So for that, we've created the short blade honing guide. So the short blade honing guide is the guide that will sharpen the blades, nothing else will. So it is a unique design. So the features on this particular guide, we've got it's set for 25 or 30 degrees, so it'll sharpen either of those angles. And the settings of this side, so it's important to use the right side. And there's the 25. As well, we have a protrusion jig that sets the blade extension for you quite easily. It makes it much easier to hold, because it's because this blade is a little tiny thing, it's a little fiddly to manage. So the 30 degree setting, the roller here fits into this groove on the protrusion jig.
So the roller sits into that almost gutter type section,
yeah.
Half round trough.
So the roller fits right in there, kind of like that. And in addition, so the 25-degree side, 30-degree side, and there's also the various thicknesses of blades, because this registers on the face of the blade, the thickness is important relative to the angle. So this is a 1/4 inch, 3/16, and 1/8 inch thick blade. So this is, most spoke shave blades are in the 1/8 inch range. Now, in addition, there's a shim here that allows us to change the protrusion for a micro bevel. So what it does, it'll shorten the protrusion up a bit, increase the angle, and I'll show you how to use that in a second. But generally speaking, a lot of these thinner blades are so thin, we often don't put a micro bevel on them. We'll sharpen the entire bevel at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this up, register the roller in that setting, bevel down, and I'm going to register it against the 1/8 inch thickness line here. Hold things in place, and I'm going to just try to tighten the jaws, these fingers, so that they hold it as close to the edge of the tool here as possible.
So they clamp down on the blade?
Yeah, they'll hold the blade in place. I'm just going to lift it. I haven't set it finally. So I just have it a little bit finger tight, so I can re-register it. Make sure that I'm tight against this ledge here, and give it a tightness. And again, you want to be as close to the front edge here as possible, so that you're delivering the pressure down on this rubberized surface here.
Anti-slip type.
That'll keep things from slipping around on you. So I've more or less centered it, but it's not really that important if it's centered. And now I'm ready to sharpen this on my stone. So that's it. Working back and forth.
So that will sit at that angle quite accurately. You've set it up on the thing.
Yeah.
You've got your roller. So the protrusion out of the jig obviously sets up the angle.
Yep. And so I'm continue to work the edge until I get the burr that I'm after, and I'll work my way up through the stones if I'm going to use multiple sharpening stones. Because you're sharpening the entire bevel, I have a tendency to start at the next stone down for the first couple of passes, because you're removing material on the entire surface of the bevel. Swing it around to get even wear on your stone, and once you've got your burr raised along the entire back edge of the blade, you can remove it. Lap the back, make sure she's flat, and you're ready to go back to work with the chisel and with the blade in the spoke shave.
So one of the hardest things to sharpen. That looks so simple.
And very easy. So this is, I've never seen anything like this. This doesn't exist anywhere. Works great for shorter blades like the wooden hand plane, Krenov style plane blades that they're nice and thick, so it'll take the 1/4 inch setting for those blades. They usually have a tendency to be that thick, and they won't fit in side clamping guide. They won't fit in the MK.II because they're usually only
Shorter length.
50 mil
versions.
long, so they're an option for that, as well as these odd shaped blades. I've also done some small plow plane blades that are at odd wall angles. You know, you can, as long as you have it registered against the lip here of this ledge square, you know that the edge is going to be square to the stone when you bring it to the stone for sharpening. So it'll,
Again, as we kind of said earlier, once you start using this, first of all, it becomes second nature to use it, get out of the box, off you go. We're actually making it repeatable, so you're cutting at the same angle each time, so you're not actually removing a lot of material, you're just really restoring that edge. As you said, you're not trying to get it blunt, you're trying to touch it up, keep it sharp.
and that's where, like in a tool like a spoke shave, the geometry of the edge is so important, because it's actually designed to work in line with the base of the sole of the spoke shave, and if you alter the geometry by faceting or trying to freehand sharpen it, and you alter the angle, you alter the performance of the tool.
So you round over the blade a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the blade becomes, if you start to round it over, of course the blade becomes much less useful to you.
Again, this is all metal. That's quite a weight. Little skids underneath. Can't believe how heavy that is. That's something to go over. That it looks quite light, but actually got good weight to it. You get the trough that you're seeing, so everything sets there nice and accurately. You can set that up, put it back in. Quite a nice addition for something where, for such a difficult tool to sharpen, like we said, spoke shave's just, oh wow. And I know from making Windsor chairs, keep them touched up, they cut beautifully. The minute you start to lose that edge, and there was that frustration, how to keep it sharp. So
yeah. So I mentioned the shim here to set for a micro bevel. So generally speaking, I wouldn't do a micro bevel on a thinner blade like the spoke shave blade. You're not really saving much. The purpose of a micro bevel is to save work when you're sharpening, because you're only sharpening the very end of the bevel. But in some cases where, like this apron plane blade, for example, you might want to use a micro bevel, because the blade does it's a little thicker and the blade's a little longer. So this is a 25-degree blade. So what I'll do is I swip over to the 25-degree setting. That's a 30, so I'll to the 25. This blade is a little thicker, so it's the 3/16 inch setting. So then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get this finger tight for now, and I'm holding it against the ledge here. And then what I'll do is, once I've got the blade somewhat secured, I'm going to use the shim here, pull this blade back just a bit, and fit the shim between the blade and the ledge. So
you're actually standing that up, and you've got that step on the front that will locate against. I got you. I can
yeah,
see
so what this does is bring the protrusion back a little bit, changes it by a degree. Now I'm going to tighten this up, make sure everything's tight here. And now I'm ready to polish my 25-degree micro bevel. So that will adjust the angle so that I'm only playing with the very edge of the blade, and allows me to do that. So that's, it adds a bit of flexibility to it, in cases where you want to employ a micro bevel on a blade that might be a little thicker, or you may want to use, some people will use a micro bevel on their spoke shave blade. So it gives you the flexibility of being able to either hone the primary bevel, or with a little bit of adjustment to the protrusion with the shim, you can employ a micro bevel in those thin, short blades as well.
So the shim just moves it back just that tiny bit. That's
Yeah.
quite an interesting way of working.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you say, you can stand it up. Quite nice to hold, actually easy to locate it. Okay, I can see real uses for that. Definitely, that simple thing with a spoke shape, we've discussed it, kind of difficult to sharpen, so that takes that guesswork out of it, makes it repeatable. We get an accurate cut blade, if you like, each time. All right, so fantastic. That's a great new one.
It's the repeatability. It allows for a difficult to sharpen blade. It brings the repeatability that you need to give you consistency for your bevel.
Okay, so we've done Mark II, a side clamp, short tool. That it? 30 others? You got any new ones? Anything on the pipeline that were...
Maybe I do. So this is one of our replica tools, and this is a current day manufacture of a tool that would have been fairly common in a craftsman's toolbox in the 40s, the 1940s. So this is designed for slotted blades that would have been popular of the Stanley planes of the day.
So I've got to investigate this because I haven't even seen this yet. Right, so it's a wheel with an arm and a finger pushed back and forward. I mean, you're never going to sharpen a plane on that.
Watch me.
I'm just about going to be proven wrong. Okay.
So this is a 25-degree Stanley blade. It also works with the sort of thicker replacement blades. So how this works is we pop this screw off. Put the slot in here. We'll tighten her down here, and I'll get her adjusted, and I'll show you.
So there's a machining on the top of that section, which fits in between the section of the blade where the cutout is.
Yeah. All right, so what we have here is the numbers 25 and 30 are your protrusions. So this is a 25-degree blade. So I'm just going to normally use a piece of wood or something to register the end of the blade on the ruler, tighten it down. So I'm just confirming that that's 25 degrees. Swing this ruler out of the way, and I'm sharpening my 25-degree blade. So this would have been in a toolbox, allowing a craftsperson of the day. They'd have their oil stone
They got
in
no
the
excuse
toolbox,
now.
and they pop the blade out very quickly, mount it here, hone it on their oil stone of the day, remove the guide, put it back in the tool, get back to work. So very efficient and very simple but elegant solution for protrusion setting.
That's quite intriguing.
It's got a cambered...
So you can have that in your trouser pockets and walk around, and water stone in the other side?
There you go, back pocket for the water stone,
okay.
yeah. Use your phones in the front pocket.
Okay,
right?
I just wondered. I mean,
Yeah.
I just...
So it has a bit of a cambered roller, so that it gives you sort of a tripod setting. So if you want to camber the blade, you can alter the pressure, but really gives you this tripod ideal stability. Again, not much pressure, and you're sharpening at the 25-degree setting. Again, they typically wouldn't use a micro bevel of the time. I don't know if they knew what micro bevel was. The blades are quite thin, like this blade here is very thin. You don't get much economy by sharpening the micro bevel, so you're going to sharpen the entire bevel normally for this. So hence the single blades protrusion setting. So this is a replica product that we've introduced, replica more or less every year. So this is the latest product and is out there for you to use.
That's so simple. So, small brass wheel. Limb stop arm, we can swing forward and back. Not to tighten it, your grooves, keeps everything nice and square. And so imagine you get your fingertips nice and low. How much control that actually gives you. That's quite impressive. simple little item, but could actually take the guesswork out. And I can see the trade guys on site. That's something that they easily have. You just have maybe a diamond stone, that sort of thing. Got the setup jig and everything with it, so it makes it simple. Okay, so I look forward to that. That'll be here. Okay, so hopefully, got anything else? Not yet? No? Okay.
No,
right.
I think that's it.
Good. So, let's have a quick look down. We've done the MK.II, which I've got to admit, I still have that problem with it. My favourite thing. Alright? Side clamp one. We've got chisel head things. I've lost it, it's down here. Short tool jig. Make spoke shapes, a dream, okay? What's this have as a name?
It's a replica.
Okay.
It's a replica of a Stanley guide from the mid 20th century.
So you've got no answers, you've got no problems now with not getting anything sharp. Everything's chisels, plane blades. Such an easy way of sharpening, okay? There's got to be something in there for most of us. We've got little issues with, look at these things, how do you make it repeatable? And we said that earlier, it's the most important thing, Rich. If we can make something repeatable, accurate, get things sharp. I've met people over the years, and I've been doing this a long time, who, I stopped doing my woodwork. Why? I can't sharpen. Now, I couldn't, as I said to you at the beginning of this, if you said to me, can you freehand sharpen a hand plane, I'd struggle. It's difficult to do. I've met people over the years who just, I just do figures of 8, it's easy. My plane blades would end up all over the place. So no accuracy. So actually, what we've got on the bench here, that takes all that guesswork out of it.
Yeah, it does. And particularly if you're starting out, that freehand sharpening technique takes a while to perfect and develop. A honing guide will eliminate the variability that you have in your technique. It will help you bring that repeatability that you need. You want to focus on the very end of the blade at the very edge. And the only way to assure that is to mount it in some sort of fixture that allows the blade to not move or change the angle of attack to the stone. And for beginning and intermediate sharpeners, this is going to give you something that's repeatable and is going to give you success. And that's the key thing is, a lot of issues around, people talk about, it takes too long, it's too fiddly, or that kind of thing. If you use any one of these guides on a regular basis, it's very efficient. I've been woodworking for 40 years. I use a guide every time I sharpen. And, I don't sharpen every day, so it's important that I use something that remembers how it feels to sharpen, and that's what the guide does for me.
The other problem is, you get older. Things don't work as well. It's quite interesting that I let freehand sharpen when I was 17, 18. And as you've kind of said, just not doing this every day, yes, it becomes more an issue. Other things, now we said anything new. Other things, Richard's got a great book out. I mean, I had a quick flick through this. This goes over basically anything you might want to learn to sharpen for a woodworking. And I mean, I've had a quick flick through, and like I say, there's hand planes, chisels, they're easy. Carving tools, all those little bits. So I don't know if we can just, if you can go to the other camera. Lots and lots of info in here, okay? Cabinet scrapers,
so
different stones.
Yeah, I tried to give you what you need to know. So there's a few pages in there on steels and metal, but it's not going to make you a metallurgist, nor do you need to be one. But you do need to understand a little bit about different types of steel so they know how they behave. In addition to a technique for sharpening chisels and plane blades, I've also included scrapers, how to sharpen scrapers, a technique for kitchen knife sharpening as well. So, and as well, intro to carving tool sharpening. So some basics to a little bit broader. Again, what you need to know to get started in those areas. It's called a handbook for a reason, because it's meant to be used. And the technique that I'm using in the book in terms of the steps that are involved, it's not the only way to sharpen. It's a way to sharpen. And if you follow that method, it will work. And over time, everybody's going to evolve their sharpening method, whether it's the guide that they use, the stones, the sharpening media that they use, whether they you start it with paper because that's what you are able to use at the time, graduating up through either diamonds or ceramic or water stones. All of those will sharpen your tools. So, and the technique is the same for the use of those various media options. So you're looking for a technique that will ground what you're doing and allow you to be successful and get that repeatability that you have to have. And to me, that's what's important. Once you've felt comfortable with that process, you can adapt it to your own situation. You can mix and match your media. But understanding what is sharp, and I talk about it in the book, what sharp means. If you understand that essentially a sharp edge is an edge that meets at two planes intersecting at a point, you can visualize the need to sharpen anything. So you pick up a set of garden shears, you look at the shape of the bevel and the shape of the edge on it. If you understand what sharp is, okay, I know how to sharpen that. You don't need somebody to show you how to do it. You can understand it. So to me, that's what I've built on there, is to try to explain just what you need to know, no more, and a technique that will get you success. And that's really what I'm hoping for beginners and intermediates alike. I mean, it is one of the true foundational skills in woodworking. If you can't sharpen, you can't woodwork. I mean, any of the tools that we use that have an edge need to be sharpened. And for the most part, need to be sharpened out of the box, brand new. So, very, very few tools that you buy, Veritas included.
That's one of the scary things I know, definitely from the amount of time I worked here, that very tools are sharp, ready to go out the box. And that's a scary thought. You've got to be able to then, and even if they are, got to be able to sharpen them. I can remember meeting one guy years ago who would buy a new set of chisels every week. And I would say they were cheap chisels because he couldn't sharpen them. And the ones that he was buying was sharper than what he got by the end of the week before. So he'd been a £12 set of chisels. Well, if you learn to sharpen them, okay. So, hopefully you guys have all found that informative. Veritas do some amazing products. I know, having been out there, the quality and everything else are top notch. They really look at redesigning something, coming up with a brand new idea. I mean, that's so simple, but well executed, easy to use. That's an important part. Should make your life easier. All right, so hopefully you've enjoyed. Rich, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming and doing
Thanks
this.
Very much.
Right?
Great to come over.
We will see you again soon with more Woodworking Wisdom. Thank you very much. Bye then.